The whispers followed Eliza through the grand hallway of the Blackwood estate, cutting deeper than any knife could. "Just the housekeeper's daughter who trapped our James," they said, not bothering to lower their voices as she passed. What they didn't know was that the woman they mocked would soon bring their entire empire crashing down, with the help of a man whose secrets were even darker than her own. If you're enjoying this story of revenge, redemption, and unexpected romance, please hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end. Eliza Blackwood, formerly Eliza Chen, clutched her simple pearl necklace as she navigated the maze of judgment that was her husband's family home. 6 months into her marriage to James Blackwood, heir to the Blackwood shipping fortune, and she still felt like an intruder. The wedding had been small and rushed, much to his mother's dismay. Victoria Blackwood had made it abundantly clear that a housekeeper's daughter was not worthy of the Blackwood name, regardless of Eliza's own accomplishments as a talented artist. "Smile, darling," James whispered, appearing at her side and slipping his arm around her waist. "They're just jealous of your beauty." But Eliza knew better. The Blackwoods weren't jealous, they were furious that their precious heir had married beneath his station. What made it worse was that James seemed oblivious to his family's cruelty, or perhaps he simply chose not to see it. The annual Blackwood Charity Gala was in full swing, the ballroom filled with Singapore's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the guests in their designer gowns and bespoke suits. Eliza's dress, while elegant, was off the rack, another fact Victoria had pointed out with a thin smile earlier that evening. "James, darling," Victoria called, waving her son over. "The Singaporean Minister of Finance wants to discuss the Newport development." James squeezed Eliza's hand. "I'll be right back, love." And just like that, she was alone again, adrift in a sea of people who saw her as nothing more than an opportunist. "They're quite merciless, aren't they?" came a deep voice from behind her. Eliza turned to find herself face to face with a tall, imposing man in an impeccably tailored suit. His features were sharp, his eyes a piercing blue that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed facade. "I don't believe we've met," she said, extending her hand. "Eliza Blackwood." "Alexander Volkov," he replied, his accent hinting at Eastern European origins. "Security consultant." There was something about him that commanded attention, a quiet power that made even the wealthiest guests give him a wide berth. What Eliza didn't know then was that Alexander was far more than a security consultant. He was the billionaire owner of Volkov International Security, personal bodyguard to European royalty, and a man with his own score to settle with the Blackwood family. "Security consultant," Eliza repeated with a small smile. "So you're here to make sure no one steals the silverware?" A hint of amusement flickered in his eyes. "Among other things." Before they could continue their conversation, Victoria appeared, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Eliza, dear, would you mind checking on the kitchen staff? They seem to be falling behind with the canapés." It was a deliberate humiliation, reminding everyone within earshot of Eliza's background. The message was clear: "You may have married my son, but you'll always be the help." Eliza felt her cheeks burn but maintained her composure. "Of course, Victoria." As she turned to leave, she caught Alexander's gaze. There was something in his expression, not pity, but understanding, and perhaps a touch of admiration. That night marked the beginning of a change in Eliza's life. Over the following weeks, she began to notice Alexander at more events. He was always watching, always observing. When their paths crossed, he treated her with a respect that was notably absent from her in-laws. Meanwhile, life in the Blackwood mansion grew increasingly unbearable. Victoria's subtle jabs became outright insults. James's brother, Richard, made inappropriate advances when they were alone. And James, sweet, conflict-averse James, continued to insist that she was imagining things. "They just need time to adjust," he'd say, kissing her forehead as if she were a child with an overactive imagination. The breaking point came during a family dinner when Victoria, accidentally, spilled red wine on Eliza's white dress, a dress she had spent weeks painting by hand for the occasion. "Oh, how clumsy of me," Victoria said with false concern. "Perhaps you can find something in the laundry room to wear instead? You must feel right at home there." The table fell silent. Even James looked uncomfortable, but he said nothing. Eliza stood slowly, dignity intact despite the wine dripping down her ruined artwork. "Excuse me," she said quietly and left the dining room. She was halfway to her room when a hand caught her arm. Expecting James, she turned to find Alexander instead. "What are you doing here?" she asked, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. "I have information you need to see," he said, his expression grave. "About your husband's family." That night, in the privacy of her studio, the one place in the mansion that felt truly hers, Alexander revealed the truth. The Blackwoods' fortune wasn't built on shipping alone. They had been involved in art theft for generations, stealing priceless works and selling them on the black market. And they had their sights set on Eliza's family heritage, a collection of ancient Chinese scrolls that had been in her mother's family for centuries. "They didn't oppose your marriage because of your background," Alexander explained. "They opposed it because they couldn't access your family's collection while you were an outsider. Now that you're a Blackwood." The revelation shattered Eliza's world. The scrolls were her only connection to her mother, who had died when Eliza was young. The thought that James might have married her for such a sinister purpose was almost too painful to bear. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, searching Alexander's face for answers. His expression softened slightly. "Because 5 years ago, they stole something precious from me too. And I've been working to bring them down ever since." Over the next few weeks, Eliza and Alexander formed an unlikely alliance. By day, she played the role of the dutiful wife, while by night, she worked with Alexander to gather evidence against the Blackwoods. She discovered that her artistic talent gave her access to circles even the Blackwoods couldn't penetrate: art dealers, museum curators, restoration experts, all people who had pieces of the puzzle. As they worked together, something unexpected happened. Eliza found herself drawn to Alexander's quiet strength, his unwavering respect for her intelligence and abilities. He never once treated her as less than his equal, something she realized James had been doing all along, in his own gentle way. "You don't need to protect the scrolls just because they're valuable," Alexander told her one evening as they pored over documents in her studio. "You protect them because they're part of who you are. Your heritage matters." It was the first time anyone had validated her connection to her past without dismissing it as sentimentality. The truth about James came to light when Eliza found detailed plans in his study, plans for an exhibition of newly discovered ancient Chinese scrolls. Her scrolls, which were safely hidden in a vault only she could access. Confronting James was the hardest thing she'd ever done. "Was any of it real?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you ever love me at all?" James's handsome face crumpled. "Of course I love you, Eliza. But you don't understand, this is family business. Some things are bigger than us. Like stealing my family's heritage? Like watching your mother humiliate me day after day and doing nothing? I protected you," he shouted, his charming facade finally cracking. "Do you have any idea what they wanted to do? They wanted to take everything from you by force. I convinced them marriage was better, cleaner." In that moment, Eliza saw James clearly for the first time, not a knight in shining armor, but a coward who chose the path of least resistance. With Alexander's help, Eliza set a trap. She announced a private showing of her family's scrolls for select members of Singapore's elite art community. The Blackwoods could hardly contain their excitement, believing they were finally close to their prize. The night of the exhibition, everything was in place. As Victoria and Richard moved to replace the real scrolls with forgeries, the lights came on to reveal not only Alexander but also representatives from Interpol's Art Crimes Division and several royal families who had been victims of the Blackwoods' theft over the years. The Blackwood family has stolen from cultures and nations around the world, Eliza announced to the stunned crowd. Tonight, that legacy ends. The evidence was irrefutable. The Blackwood empire began to crumble that very night as news of their crimes spread through Singapore's elite circles. In the aftermath, Eliza found herself free but adrift. Her marriage was over, her trust shattered. She retreated to a small apartment with her scrolls, focusing on her art to heal her wounded spirit. It was there that Alexander found her, 3 months later. "You disappeared," he said simply when she opened the door. "I needed time," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. Her apartment was transformed into a studio, canvases covering every available surface. But these weren't the safe, decorative pieces she'd created as James's wife. These were raw, powerful works that told the story of her journey, from humiliation to strength. "These are extraordinary," Alexander said, studying a particularly striking painting of a woman rising from ashes. "You found your voice." "I had help," she said quietly. "Someone showed me my power was there all along." Alexander turned to her, his usually guarded expression open. "I'm leaving for Europe tomorrow. The Belgian royal family has requested my services personally." Eliza felt a pang of disappointment. "I see. They've also expressed interest in hosting an exhibition of emerging artists. Artists whose work speaks to resilience and cultural heritage." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Volkov?" "I'm offering you a partnership," he replied. "In whatever form you wish it to take." 6 months later, Eliza Chen, no longer Blackwood, stood in a grand gallery in Brussels, watching as European royalty and art connoisseurs admired her work. Her family's scrolls were displayed in a special section, on loan to the museum with proper attribution and respect. And beside her stood Alexander, no longer just her ally but something much more. "They never saw your true power," he murmured, his hand finding hers. "But I did, from the first moment." Eliza smiled, thinking of how far she had come from that humiliated woman in the Blackwood mansion. Sometimes we need someone to reflect our strength back to us before we can see it ourselves. As the evening drew to a close, Eliza addressed the gathered crowd. "Art is about truth," she said. "And the truth is that power doesn't come from wealth or family names. It comes from knowing who you are and standing firm in that knowledge, no matter who tries to diminish you." She glanced at Alexander, who watched her with pride and something deeper, something that had grown between them through shared purpose and mutual respect. "When someone tries to bury you, remember that you are a seed," she continued. "And with the right care and courage, you can grow into something more magnificent than anyone ever imagined." The applause was thunderous, but Eliza heard only Alexander's words as he leaned close. "You were never buried, Eliza. You were planted." And in that moment, surrounded by her art and the man who had helped her reclaim her power, Eliza knew that sometimes the greatest victories come after the deepest humiliations, and that true strength often emerges from the places where we feel most broken. If this story of finding strength in your darkest moments touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of triumph over adversity. Remember, your true power can never be taken from you, it only waits to be discovered.